Welcome back, Flare community. Happy Tuesday. I hope you're all well and having an incredible day as always. And yes, today we're actually going to be tuning into a live stream over on X, hosted by none other than Vet. He's a validator on the XRP ledger. He's very well informed with all things XRP, and he's going to be talking with Hugo, who obviously needs no introduction. He is our main guy. Flare Labs CEO, and they're going to be talking everything about XRP staking on the Flare network. So if you are here, great to see you all. We've got Zifnab in the house, we've got me, we've got Greg, XRP Big Dreams, D in the house, and Gala Fanboy. So yeah, this is what we're going to be talking about. Hugo says, I'm looking forward to talking with Vet later today about what is being built on Flare for XRP staking, how it works, and how it uniquely leverages Flare's protocols. This is actually due to start in just a couple of minutes time. So yep, 2 minutes time exactly. And yes, this is what Flare had to say about this post earlier today. XRP is native to the XRP ledger, which, unlike Ethereum or Flare, does not support smart contracts. This means that there is no native staking or access to DeFi protocols. Maybe I disagree with that because obviously the XRP ledger is a decentralized exchange and you can now provide liquidity just as you would in a lot of the DeFi platforms on Flare. But this is where F assets change the game. Via F assets, the 100 billion market cap XRP lands on Flare as FXRP, programmable, composable, and fully DeFi capable. So that's what I'm going to be talking about today. If we go here, this is another post from Flare, XRP staking on Flare networks. A lot of people ask, where will the yields come from? So first, once XRP lands on Flare as an F asset, holders will gain access to a variety of DeFi opportunities. And do note that this is the existing DeFi ecosystem that we already have built. There's many DeFi applications on Flare, and to me personally, this is one of the benefits that we see opposed to, or in comparison to, the highly anticipated XRP EVM sidechain, because that will obviously need applications to launch, and it seems like Flare has already gone through this maturation of development, and a lot of new applications have launched on Flare, and they're going to be instantly accessible the moment FXRP lands on Flare, and that will be when F assets are live. They'll be able to participate in liquidity pools, money markets, perpetual markets, and earn yield from real-world assets available on the network. The second way that the yields will be generated is that in addition to the DeFi opportunities, there will be rewards from this staking protocol on Flare, which offers its own set of incentives. Third and finally, Secured Services Networks, SSNs. These are projects that will leverage the staked XRP to enhance its economic security. In exchange, Security Services Networks will compensate stakers with governance tokens or a share of the fees generated as part of their rewards. That's what Hugo's going to be expanding on today, and I'm sure he's going to be talking about both the FTSO, he's going to be talking about F assets as well, And it does look like we've just got started here. I'm sure they're just going through introductions, but it's great to see we've got Death Ranger in the space as well. So with that said, guys, I'm probably going to mute my microphone and we'll just get into it here. And oh, a lot of people just dropped off. Let's quickly check in and see if this party is started yet. Okay, guys, it looks to be good. I'm going to turn my microphone down and we'll listen in. Please feel free to chat in the comments.
Folks. We're going to let people join. Have a little bit of time here. I have Shellfish and Death Ranger also in the co-hosting seats.
Could you bring up OX Danos from our team as well?
Yes.
He will request to speak.
There you go. Nice Remilio PFP, Tanos.
Thanks, I appreciate it.
Awesome. Yeah, for those who joined, we're going to give it like a minute or two for people to join and share and get suited for the space. It's going to be very, very exciting one. Something I personally have also been waiting for to do myself with Hugo and to talk about this very topic specifically because in the very recent times this has been now more and more a topic in the XRP community. We have been seeing like various maybe platforms have been joining, but also people talking a bit more concrete and thinking about staking, yield, and all these functionalities and opportunities in combination with XRP and the XRP ledger. And I think right now is a very, very good point in time to digest this, talk about it, and see what's out there. And specifically for you as a user who has, of course, funds at the line here, to be safe. Yeah, to be safe, to ask the right questions, and then ultimately to make the decision whether you want to engage in various activities or not. That is the ultimate goal, to have that all in place, and for you that you better can differentiate between not only platforms but offerings, opportunities that come along, because that is something very, very important, specifically I would say for the XRP community, because we historically haven't had a huge DeFi on-chain community or usage. Therefore, a lot of the learnings might be skipped over, and I would love that we could maybe fast track it without making the same mistakes, just to learn from other ecosystems and good learnings, that best practices, things that are maybe developed right now or being developed, things to look out for. That is very, very important, I believe, for us as in the XRP community. So that is the goal of today's space. I see a lot of people already joined. It's very fantastic. So yeah, I think we're gonna kick it off with that, with the long intro here. I invited, as I said here specifically, Hugo. I had with Hugo a conversation a couple of weeks, many weeks I think ago before, just to talk about the recent developments also on the XRP ledger, because this is where then these offerings came around, various projects. And I wanted to get a good understanding from someone who is in this field, building these things in a decentralized manner, what the thoughts are from his side. And yeah, we definitely said we should have a public discussion here with the community. With that being said, as I said, public discussion with the community. I know probably almost everybody who is in the audience. So if you want to participate, of course, in a really nice, cordial discussion, feel free to request. I'm gonna let you up if I know you and I know that you want to contribute to a good discussion. Feel free to request and join the conversation. This is us sitting together and talking about it. First, Hugo, thanks for joining with us here and participating in this. I really, really looking forward to this.
Hey, thank you so much for organizing this. in case there are some of your listeners that don't know who I am, I'm Hugo, Hugo Fillion. I'm co-founder and CEO of Flare. Flare is a blockchain for data. Data drives everything, and the way we handle data is through totally decentralized protocols. And using that data allows us to do really interesting things with other blockchains. And principally, we've been focusing on XRP for a very long time. And when I talk about data, could be market data, could be social media data, could be many types of data, but specifically the type of data that allows us to become interoperable with XRP is state data from the XRP ledger, of which Flare, I think, has the most sophisticated way of getting that data. And we can talk about how that data is used to allow you to essentially bridge XRP to Flare later.
So very fantastic intro here, and we have also Thanos. I think he's is a developer at Flare. Is that correct?
No, Trev is our DeFi lead.
Perfect. Thanos, if you want to give just a few words to yourself.
Yeah, for sure. I appreciate that. So my name is Thanos. I lead kind of the DeFi and on-chain efforts here at Flare. So what I've predominantly been tasked with over the last 6 months has been building out our DeFi ecosystem in preparation for what we're building, which is our one-to-one bridge, which is F Assets, which we will launch on Flare, which gives you the ability to take XRP from the XRPL and then mint FXRP on Flare. And then from there, I've been thinking more broadly about what you can do with that FXRP downstream, and then working with specific dApps within our ecosystem to help prepare for what I think will be Flare's biggest launch yet.
That's fantastic. I mean, that sets the stage for a really awesome conversation and discussion here. But before we jump in, I have to ask this, Hugo. How was your Q1 so far? I mean, if I look, in the past couple days, it's been very, very hectic in the crypto community, to say the least. But how's been Q1 so far for you, and how did you experience it personally?
Yeah, it's been really good actually. I mean, yeah, there's volatility, but I don't. If the market's doing something, the market will fix itself eventually. I appreciate that it's like really gut wrenching. It's gut wrenching for all of us to watch, all of the tokens just like absolutely have a bad day or a bad week. But we got to just be heads down. I didn't enter this space because I thought. I'm going to measure things over a 2 to 3 week time frame. I think it's absolutely straightforward that the future of finance and the future of many other things are going to be on chain. So ultimately, what happens in the 3 to 6 month period doesn't really interest me because we're building for the future. And then, Q1's been a really good quarter for Flare. Our TVL has been solid. Interest developers has been very solid. The hackathon we did around verifiable AI with Google was really fantastic and has resulted in a number of a lot of interest in what we're building in AI, but also a number of new teams joining Flare to build products around AI. So it's been a great Q1.
Yeah, so for me, it was like specifically that. The couple of months, I would say, the beginning of this year, where I heard a lot more about institutions now being very interested. I heard that, oh, look, retail is maybe more bearish, but look, institutions are so much bullish on this technology, and it was like this mismatch of retail not seeing it essentially, but institutions having so much interest in it and pushing into the space. Unfortunately, like me as a retail person, I don't have that connection or I would say conversations with these people. So I'm curious, did you get the same sentiment also from your side, high level, that there's a shift in that thinking? I just want to have a from you.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, I think there's a lot of retail, institutional interest, and I think there's a bigger mismatch, in where that institutional research, interest wants to go and what can actually be done on chain. And I think that's quite interesting. So, if you view blockchains as just rails for money, that's fine. It can be new rails. But fundamentally, I find that broadly an uninteresting concept. I think it's much more interesting is what you can do to bring institutions together in a way where they don't have to trust each other. One of the biggest issues of running a financial or working in a financial institution is you're very limited in the number of people you can transact with, and this is largely because you've got to onboard the people you transact with. You've got to KYC them, you've got to AML them, you've got to work with their systems. It's all very complicated, and I think one of the reasons I find blockchains interesting is I like the ability to open up the market in a way that conventional businesses can't ever do, and I think that's where we'll see a really big institutional adoption the next year. But I think they'll struggle actually for things to find outside of stablecoins, and that's where Flare is pitching itself. It's okay if you want to do institutional business, but you want to do more. We've got a fantastic layer for you to build things on that is nicely decentralized and gives you amazing compute. So that leads into Flare 2.0, which is something I announced at the kind of tail end of Q2, but we don't have to cover that here.
Yeah. I mean, it's a really nice overview you gave, and I believe that as well. And a lot of the advantages for DeFi and blockchain seems to be, of course, very appealing to these institutions for the very same reason almost that we are excited for. It's just a different, not only magnitude but also application, right? Like transparency, auditability, accountability. Everything is like public. You can verify these things. That is very exciting to me, of course, and it seems like it's very also exciting for institutions. Even
I give you like one small example that comes to mind. It's like trade finance is the type of finance that allows the entire world to basically send and receive products. There would be like no consumer economy if we didn't have some form of trade finance. There's tons of product sitting on the sea, tons of product sitting on, in cargo depots, in ports, in trains. All of that product someone has financed. But it has been the preserve of maybe 10 merchant banks to finance the entire global trade end to end for the last 60 years. And that is great for those banks, although they're becoming less and less interested in it because the cost of doing business is higher because of things like sanctions and trying to figure out who you're actually doing business with. So there's huge corridors that are becoming underserved. And one of the things that being able to move finance, like finance that touches the real world on chain, does is it enables like individuals, me and you, to get involved in global finance in a way that is like sort of sensible and if built correctly, relatively low risk. And this is like the power that this technology can bring to bear, is cracking open a market that has been controlled by 10 people for 60 years, 10 entities for 60 years, and ultimately allowing people to get a better yield, which is really important, than they could get just by keeping their money in a bank, by doing something more interesting financially.
Right. Yeah, and this cross-border, like global nature of it is probably the, as you said, the most exciting one here. There's also some interesting questions, of course, that would come up with, let's say you have a financial product, a DeFi product, or a financial product in that sense. Jurisdictions become very blurry, right? It's on the blockchain? Maybe it's a smart contract, it's deployed somewhere. Um, like where are the borders nowadays then? And because everybody can access it, and that is something, has pros and cons probably, depending on from which
But
perspective.
this is where data becomes very valuable, because you can't go to court in the blockchain. So a trade can only be settled by, well, what data is, did this product get delivered? Do I have the data for it? Can I expose that data on chain to settle the trade? So that's a very simple way of talking about something that's very complex, but
Right.
ultimately, the idea is if you can get the data, you can open the market up.
Yeah, and we kind of right into this now already. So to go into that direction, there have been a lot of projects that I've been seeing, specifically now coming from the XRP ledger. Talking about that yield, you mentioned that it's very important. Opportunity cost. People want to, capital flows where the yield is, and of course under consideration of risk, but it goes typically where the yield is, and on the XRP ledger, that I would say landscape is right now developing, and we are seeing a lot of projects pushing through that. And so, there's various terms. For example, staking. I just want to make it very clear that staking as that form, we don't really have on the XRP ledger. Actually, we don't. That's a clear no. Um, if you don't mind, maybe you want to explain from your point of view, also from your expertise, what is staking? So for people that they know what is staking.
Absolutely. Well, look, I think there's a lot of conflation of the term staking in the XRP community, with things that are not, really staking. So, for instance, putting your money into an AMM is not staking. It is being a liquidity provider. Putting your money into a thing that calls itself staking, but is actually where they use your XRP to take trades on centralized exchanges, is not staking. That is essentially investing in some kind of unregulated fund. And I think there's if I've looked at most of the projects, many of them are misusing the term staking. Staking is sort of fundamentally how a proof of stake network is secured. So on the XRP ledger, the way it is kind of secured is it uses a UNL, unique node list, right? And you have these overlaps of the UNL, and this basically forms the network topology, and that is how consensus occurs within the XRP. On Bitcoin, you have nodes, but you also have miners, and miners expend energy in order to collectively confirm a transaction. In a proof of stake network, you have a validator, and a validator stakes to their own validator. This is called self-bond. And then other people can also stake to that validator. It's called delegated stake. And specifically, ultimately, the validator's power is determined by how much stake they have between their own stake and the stake that is delegated towards them. So if if there's 1,000 validators and they each have a certain amount of stake, that dictates their power in sending messages around in the network that then ultimately come to consensus. It's a slightly simplified version of it, but that is what staking it is. It is the conference of economic value of the token towards a particular validator or some set of validators, depending on how the staking works, that defines how consensus is reached in a network. And that is staking, and that is like the definition of staking. And participating in financial products is not staking.
Thank you. Very good that you made that also very clear. And I always try to make that also very clear, but because people, they just read lines and then get confused by what's going on. But it's very, very important to make that distinction, because it comes also with a risk the implication, right? The risk factor is totally different between you using it to, let's say, delegate or stake for a validator, than give it to maybe a money market fund that goes in and or an AMM, as you said, with impermanent loss. It's very, very different.
Absolutely. So with staking on the whole, so if you stake Flare on Flare, we don't have a slashing risk, but you may not get rewards if your validator doesn't do the right things. On other networks, there can be slashing, whereby the stake that is delegated to the validator gets slashed. Usually, it's only accrued rewards that is slashed. And so, slashing is a very rare occurrence, and it's only a percentage. So the risk is very, very low generally in staking, in real staking. The risk, obviously, of impermanent loss in an AMM, which is not staking, is a very different and much higher risk, depending on what assets are in the AMM. So, if it's 2 stable coins in the AMM, the risk is much lower. If it's a stable coin against a volatile coin, like a crypto, the impermanent loss risk is much higher. If you're staking to an entity that is effectively a fund that hasn't done any KYC or AML on you, I would say that the risk is extremely high, because they're breaking the law to start with. But that's, if they haven't done AML and KYC on you, to me, that's a real indication of who they are as people. They haven't done just the basics to be very compliant. And so to define staking, it's to stake to secure a network, and that is what is being built by an institutional partner of Flare. I'm not going to name them on this call because they want to announce who they are and do their own marketing and things like that. But we have defined using our protocols a way to create a staking system for XRP that allows effectively XRP to be staked to secure services in the form of blockchains or other services that are a form of distributed network. Could be like an Oracle service, could be, and we can come onto this, and I'd love to come onto this, a machine learning service. But ultimately, the concept of what's being built on Flare is the ability to stake XRP into some service to receive yield, and that yield is in the token that is offered by that service. We can't create XRP yield out of thin air. The only way you could create XRP out of some form of product, it would be if it were a financial product. And it's, we're not building a financial product. We are building a security product whereby XRP can be used to secure other services.
Very well said. And Thanos, I saw you unmute. I'm pretty sure you want to chime in here as well to that staking topic.
Yeah, I think Hugo, for the most part, touched upon how we've thought about restaking overall, or just the XRP staking product. To be clear, when you put your XRP into anything on chain, there's different parameters that you're agreeing to, right? If you put in, let's say, XRP into a lending protocol, or any of these other types of protocols, they have the ability to rehypothecate that specific asset, right? So if you deposit USDC into a lending protocol, or let's say RLUSD into a lending protocol, they are then giving that RLUSD to someone on the other side, and lending that out, right? So in theory, that's rehypothecation of an asset. In staking, you are agreeing to a specific set of rules and consensus that your stake would abide by for a specific validator, right? So it's very, very much different from liquidity providing on chain versus staking uh, to generate yield from specific validated services, right?
Right. Yeah. Thanks for also giving that context here too. So one thing, because we're in the middle of this of that discussion specifically here, deep in the weeds of it, is like the two questions that typically I would say are very, very important to always ask and have in mind when looking at these things is when we talk not only now we define what staking is, but even beyond now, yield opportunities or opportunities in general, DeFi, when we talk about DeFi, is where does the yield come from, right? Very, very classic. And the second one is it custodial, self-custodial, right? Like what are the risks to my holdings? Am I in control? Am I not in control? How does it work? So I want to hear from you, Hugo, for these two things specifically. Where does the yield come from? Um, Maybe you can give like a specific example for your with Flare. What are you guys doing, just so that people understand where that is coming from and why it is so important to understand where the yield is coming from. Because we all have seen this where you see like all these people say, hey, I'm going to use this product or I'm using this service. It is so attractive, and then you see the yield and you ask, oh, cool, that is very attractive indeed, but where does the yield come from? And then it's like shrugging shoulders. I find this very, very dangerous.
So the yield comes from, in the staking system that is being built by our partner for XRP using Flare. The yield comes from ultimately the emissions of whatever service you are using. So if you look at any proof of stake network, they emit tokens as a way to reward the validators for participating. The validators that have staked and the people that have staked to those validators as a reward for securing the network. So, next year, once Flare is fully distributed, our yield will be roughly just a little shy of 5% on total token supply. So, like any proof of stake based system, the yield is coming from providing your XRP as security and getting paid in the token of that service in order to for essentially giving that network or service security.
So basically, it comes they're either from the protocol, right? Because if you secure with the protocol, let's say in a classic proof of stake, it comes from a protocol. But if you secure in your case, other apps or chains with it, then it comes from those hosts, right? Like they would need to pay.
Yeah. So if you're securing a chain through the staking service, that is effectively the same as delegating your XRP to a validator on that chain.
Yeah, do you want to chime in, Thanos? I saw you unmuted.
Yeah, for sure. So with the staking protocol, right, you would stake your XRP, and then you're providing, let's say, security to specific types of validators, or what in the stake or in the restaking world they called AVS, which are actively validated services, right? These actively validated services are essentially types of protocols that exist with a specific set of rules that you would stake to, right? So a lot of what has been talked about for AVSs has been pre-confirmations. So the ability for chains to essentially settle faster with some guarantees to like what that chain needs to be able to come to consensus faster before the block is mined. So pre-confirmations have been talked about a lot within the EVM world. There's also different types of protocols that you can build that would have stake, right? So Hyperlane is another one that people use on Eigenlayer to stake to. So that's specifically how yield on an ongoing basis would be generated for people that are staking, right? It's staking to specific AVSs or protocols that have a specific set of rules as to what they need, and then provide and pay for that security.
Yeah, that makes sense, because that paying for the security is essentially like when the protocol would, in a again, in a classic proof of stake, would pay the people who are putting their stake up for the validator, so that essentially you are confirming blocks. That's your reward for doing so.
Yep, exactly. You are agreeing to a specific set of rules that a protocol needs security for,
Yeah.
let's say during some period of time or for some specific like action, and they're willing to pay for that security during that, like to execute that specific action, right?
Okay. Okay. Yeah, that makes total sense. Now that we know, okay, that is how staking works, and this is how you try to get this basically out for other chains and own app or app chains. And we also know it's not possible on the XRP ledger. Now is of course the question: how does that connection work? How can someone then on the XRP ledger, when they have, let's say, XRP, do all of these things without, basically, because XRP only exists on the XRP ledger, it cannot leave it, like that. How does it work? How does it connect? Do basically validators on Flare run XRP Ledger nodes to monitor these things, and where are the funds go? This is like the second one. Is it self-custodial, non-custodial? How does that work?
Yeah, for
So
sure.
let's try to break. You want to break this down?
No,
Or I'm happy to.
I think you should give it a stab, Hugo.
Okay. So we have, we're Flare, we have data protocols. We're building effectively a bridge between XRP and Flare using those data protocols. We introduced, XRP v1.1 as a concept not too long ago, and we'll be upgrading from XRP v1.1 to FXRP v2, which uses protocol managed wallets. So let's just deal with the protocol managed wallets version of FXRP, because it's like the simplest. Ultimately, protocol managed wallets allows Flare to set up an address on the XRP ledger that can only make transactions based on an output from Flare's consensus. Right. This is the long and the short of protocol managed wallets. There's quite a long blog on it, but ultimately it's an address that can only make transactions based on Flare's consensus. So something happens on Flare, or some data comes from another network, and this is the key bit, whereby essentially you have a staked position, and it's staked to another network, let's say an L2, or a sidechain, let's say an XRP-based sidechain. We run nodes on the XRP ledger. We run nodes on the network that you want to stake to, and we're able to determine, and we're able to essentially prove onto Flare what the validators on that sidechain have done. We can prove that they've been good. We can prove they've been bad. Which allows the rewards to be apportioned or slashed, if slashing exists. So that effectively is, we have a bridge for the XRP. It gets staked. It gets apportioned to a set of validators, whether it's effectively, like, let's just use the XRP sidechain as the example. Those validators get power on that sidechain based on how much XRP is staked to them, and they receive rewards. Those rewards effectively go down to Flare, where the XRP is staked, and are apportioned to those people who have staked to that sidechain. Now, it gets a lot more complicated than that when you start talking about liquid staking tokens and yield strategies, but that is the basic setup of how this works.
Thomas, do you want to also chime in? Because I wasn't sure if you also want to give context.
No, but I think Hugo covered it there.
Perfect. Yeah, because typically the difficult things we mentioned that where is the yield coming from, and securing a network or apps is very straightforward, right? It's not something more complicated or a very difficult DeFi strategy behind it, with a lot of moving parts. It's like you putting something on stake for a host chain that says, "Hey, it's hard to bootstrap a network, so I might as well, use something." Use a service like that, so that makes very clear where the yield comes from. Also, it's very easy to say there's then no yield if there's, of course, no user or no app or chain that would host something like that there. But there would be, of course, yield. The more yield, the more people would use it, and that becomes a competitive environment. So that dynamic makes very much sense. I would still love to dive in a little bit more into the custodial part, and to see how that works. For example, the slashing and things like that. If someone would misbehave or anything like this, how can someone ensure, or how can you guys ensure to have basically these funds um, being able to slash or similar, but also keep it like, still non-custodial, as you said. I think that goes with the protocol managed wallets that comes into that play. But before we go into this, so just stop on that. I see Devon has his hands up, and feel free to chime in, Devon, as we go. You've been here.
Yes, that was actually going to be the exact question that I asked. And to add on to the self-custodial part, could you also explain if there's a time lock period for the asset as well, and how long it could be, if you could expand on that?
Sure, I'll deal with the custodial part. I'm not sure we can talk about the time logs at the moment, because I think, that it's not, that is going to be very dependent on the product, and each individual actively validated service, right? So, each one will have their own rules. But ultimately, the custodial bit is quite simple. Rather than using a custodian, you're depositing your XRP to a protocol managed wallet. This is not a custodian. This is a wallet that can only make transactions based on something that happens on Flare. It's that simple. It basically extends Flare's consensus onto the XRP ledger. So you can think of it as, let's try and break this down into an analogy, or like a very simple use case to kind of build the understanding. So let's say you want to, and this is not staking, this is a financial product, but let's say you just want to have a bet with your friend on XRP's price at the end of June. And today the XRP price is, last I looked, about 1.9. And you want to say, your friend says, I think it'll be 5, let's say. And you say, well, I think it'll be 4. And you both put up XRP. But where do you put it? Okay, so you would send your XRP to a protocol managed wallet, which would hold it based on an application on Flare that has been written that allows people to express these kind of views. And that application, at the end of the term, at the end of the period by which the bet is running, will take the price from the Flare time series oracle of XRP and effectively decide, it will say to the protocol managed wallet, okay, you need to send 10 XRP to Bob. Or if the other person in the bet, it's called Freddy, you need to send 10 XRP to Freddy, right? Like, it's entirely decentralized. There's no people that can change that. It's entirely based on having written an application on Flare that can trigger a transaction in the protocol managed wallet. Does that make sense? Can I break that down more?
Yeah, no, that makes total sense, because it makes also a lot more sense when we think about how would, because when we think of staking again, we need to go back to the original idea. It's, you know, secure a network, and if you do it in a classic direct way, let's say you have a validator, let's say Ethereum, you would stake with your validator, self bond, as you said, and if I misbehave or whatever, right, I get slashed. But in order to have that, the protocol needs to have basically ability to do that, right? So the protocol acts there in a way that it can do that even. And I think this is the only way that you probably anyone can do that is just with the protocol itself. It cannot be someone else, right? It has to be the protocol.
Yeah, you need protocol and you need the data and you need a smart contract engine that allows the protocol to process that data. And that's what, and you need a way to administer the XRP, which is what the protocol managed wallet gives you. And so all of these things can be built on this stack that we have built. And all of these things can be built, most importantly, without, essentially just using consensus, not using centralized party.
Okay, so if someone would want to do that, they would need to put it into the protocol managed wallet, and that protocol managed wallet, what kind of capabilities does it have? Can I, as a user, still move funds in and out, things like that?
No, you as a user, you can not move funds in and out. You can deposit to a protocol managed wallet in order to get something on Flare. Whether that is to participate in, let's say, a bet between your friend or to stake XRP. And then, let's take the staking XRP example. You staked XRP and you have received a liquid staking token for a particular set of services that, someone has created a liquid staking token. So they essentially, maybe they're a DAO, they decide, okay, your XRP gets staked to this entity or this entity, this set of validators or this set of validators. And this is a very common thing in proof of stake based networks. There are liquid staking providers who basically do the job on behalf of the community to apportion stake. And again, it's done in a decentralized way. So it's not like they can just get their hands on the XRP. It's done with a contract, smart contract. So, they receive effectively the ability to deploy the XRP to a validator and only to a validator of a service, not deploy the XRP to anywhere else. So you've now received a liquid staking token. And so, sorry?
Yeah, if you want to continue, sorry, I will.
Yeah, so you've now received a liquid staking token, and you want to now get your XRP back. So you send that liquid staking token back to the staking contract, and this then effectively is like a redeem, and it sends Flare comes consensus over that, and the protocol managed wallet sends you back your XRP.
Yeah, so just to clarify there, the XRP is always available to the user to take in and out of the protocol managed wallet, right? And that XRP is held in a trust minimized way, right? Like it's hosted in a trusted execution environment, which is a lot of what we've been talking about recently. And if you look at trusted execution environments more broadly, it's becoming the way to facilitate a lot of like crypto infrastructure in a decentralized way, right? So if you look at Flashbots on Ethereum, they moved all of their infrastructure into TEs. Fala and a lot of these other networks have also been looking at TEs to help scale and use trust minimized execution environments, right?
Can you quickly maybe explain what trust execution environments
Yeah,
are?
so trusted execution environments are essentially it's essentially here, let's put it this way, a server or a computer that has encrypted memory that no one can access, right? So no one can access your specific XRP unless there's a specific set of instructions that allow it to be accessed, right? So it's very similar to how a smart contract operates, right? And these servers would be hosted by numerous different people that then allow for those specific set of instructions to be executed within that encrypted memory. That memory cannot physically be taken by anyone, which a lot of people talk about seeds and how you'd get seeds. So, I mean, my background comes from Bitcoin custody. I used to help people learn and understand how you custody your own Bitcoin, right? So I'm also very sensitive towards this topic. What we'd always tell people is well, you don't want to store your seed on your computer because if anyone ever gets access to your memory, they would be able to essentially extract the seed from the memory. But if that memory is encrypted and no one can access that memory, well, you can store a seed there safely, right? So that's the idea behind protocol managed wallets and how we think about
So
like the custodial to
yeah,
non-custodial side.
so they are basically chips servers. Is it like how can people think about them?
Yeah,
Are they basically virtual
I mean,
machines?
the way to think about it is it's an enclave, or let's say, honestly, you can think about it very similarly to how like a smart contract operates, right? It's an enclave which does specific sets of instructions that you give it. And if the people who are launching this trusted execution environment agree to those specific set of instructions, there's only specific things that trusted execution environment can do. Um, and that would be public, and like people would know what those specific things are. So you have a smart contract. Think about it as the way that you have specific methods or functions on that smart contract, right? Very similarly to that. No one can access that specific memory without like destroying the memory physically. And those sets
Hmm.
of instructions can only be operated as long as there's certain parameters that are agreed upon and then executed on.
Do you know who is manufacturing
Yeah,
these?
so Intel, AMD, NVIDIA. Actually, not AMD, but Intel and NVIDIA. And there's one other manufacturer that I think that that we speak to. So if you can, in theory, launch trusted execution environments that help manage these protocol managed wallets um, in, let's say, numerous different locations that all help control and access or control and instruct those specific wallets, it's essentially a very trust minimized way of facilitating transactions on the XRPL and on Flare at the same time.
That's interesting. So basically, also what you said, they basically get also more and more adoption on other chains. I mean, you mentioned the flash bots and so on because they have like very much advantages that people cannot view them
Yeah,
prior to something happening. So it's very good for these sort of
yeah,
things.
exactly. I mean, it almost gives you like GPU level or CPU level compute. I would say like GPU level compute without the security risks of losing keys, right? Or let's say without the security risks of your seed being exposed, which is major in crypto.
Let's go to Shellfish and then yeah, Shellfish, go ahead.
Hi, Hugo. Hi, Thanos. Yeah, I had a question. So I had caught a video from a few months back, and it was talking about Santiago building on Flare, and I was wondering, I believe his was regarding decentralized futures long term. Do you think this could spark more institutional grade derivatives across chains?
Yeah, for sure. So I think very plainly, to put it this way, obviously you saw Ripple acquire like a prime brokerage today, right? For $1.25 billion. That is absolutely no joke. At the same time, Coinbase is making a push to acquire Deribit, right, which allows you to structure option calls. Um, and so historically, what you see on chain that has been the most popular has been perps, which we have a few perp dexes that have launched, including Santiago's, which we're still iterating on to make it better and more user friendly. And I just think more broadly, like perps have been the most popular instrument of leverage to trade within crypto, and you're seeing a lot of institutions use perps in numerous different ways. I mean, I'd be happy to have like an entire other discussion on as to like how people are leveraging perps. to trade, but institutions and a lot of funds use perps to trade within crypto. And I think options more broadly, as markets do mature, they become more popular. Um, so you'll start to see more volume on options. You'll start to see more liquidity increase, and the great thing about XRP and Flare and Bitcoin is that they trade 24/7, right? So these options are extremely malleable, and there's very different ways that you can kind of structure them. So yeah, I mean, I'm super excited about options in crypto. I think that it's really gonna unleash a side of users and institutions on chain specifically as well. And I think Flare is striving to help build that for XRP users and alongside the XRPL sidechain.
Thanks, Thanos. I'm sure Vet and Death Ranger and I will be reaching out, and I'm sure there's quite a few people in the community that would love to have another fireside with you.
Yeah, I'm also thinking here, Hugo, just from, of course, hearing all of this is very much thought through, but it also shows specifically um, how much more work it needs to do these things in a decentralized manner versus shortcutting and doing it in a centralized manner, right? Because all of these things wouldn't be absolutely not necessary if I just say, give me, your money or something like this. Like all of these things we could just skip, but to do it in a decentralized manner, it takes so much more work.
Absolutely. I mean, we've spent a long time, building out Flare, building out the data protocols. We can't do any of this without the data protocols in a decentralized way. Of course, I could have gone to a custodian and said I want to make a bridge, and I want to handle people's XRP and I want to use it in financial products. I could have done that really quickly. Probably in a couple of weeks. But I would also have to KYC and AML everyone in order to do that, which then you're really just back in conventional finance.
Fantastic. Well, there was been keeping it short and sweet here. I mean, the hour blast through without me even thinking how fast that was going here. I really enjoyed it, and 100% we definitely have to do it again. And I see Death Ranger has his hands up. We definitely, go with Death Ranger first before we go to the outro.
Thank you, Vet, and for having me here today, and Hugo for making time, and Thanos for being here. I have been long time waiting for this protocol to go live, and been a supporter of an enthusiast of the Flare network and the Songbird ecosystem, and it's been a very long journey for you, Hugo, and really I'd like to personally hear just where you feel like you guys are as a team and your accomplishments that you guys have made, and then somewhat relatively short term for your guys' future and where you really want to see things go, and the developments that you'd really like to see being done on top of Flare from an application standpoint.
Yeah, absolutely. How's the team and everything? I mean, the team's operating in a way that I've never seen it operate before, extremely well. Protocols getting shipped, they've been shipped, they're getting, we're much, we're much finer running engine than we were, let's say, 2 years ago. And we're much more capable of sticking to timelines. Part of that's having a larger team. Part of that's just having a lot more experience in managing teams and all that kind of stuff. So I think I'm very, very happy with where we are as a team in terms of where we're going. I mean, I think it's very interesting to me that Ripple bought a prime broker today. And they'll do very well out of that. But it's amusing to me because I spend a lot of time thinking about, okay, what is missing in DeFi? What is missing in the space? And one of the things that is really missing is a decentralized prime brokerage function. One of the things prime brokers do is they extend margin to traders against their existing positions. So you might have a large amount of Tesla stock, And you might go to your prime broker and say, hey, I really want to buy, I don't know, IBM. Not sure why you would, but whatever. I need to borrow against this Tesla stock. Prime broker will assess the risk of the Tesla stock and lend you some margin and set margin levels where you get liquidated and all this kind of stuff. But this doesn't exist as a crypto protocol. And what we're building, this doesn't exist as a crypto protocol, as a decentralized protocol. It obviously is a huge thing in traditional finance, and that's what Ripple purchased. They purchased a traditional finance prime broker. But it'd be kind of cool if it was a protocol, but it can't be a protocol today. First thing you need for it to be a protocol is protocol managed wallets. Second thing you need is vast compute. You need vast compute because you need to be able to assess the risk of the various different assets that people would be willing to essentially extend margin to. But you also need that compute such that if you're offering this as a product in a decentralized way, someone can't come in and change that compute and suddenly apply zero risk to fart coin, enabling a large amount of money to be lent to people that want to take fart coin positions, when it should only be less than 1% of that money should be lent to people that want to take fart coin positions. So the question is, how do you get a very large amount of compute, but make it safe so that it can't be altered? And this is where we're going with TEs. So we're building protocol managed wallets so that it can hold assets. And we're going with TEs in the direction of, I want to be able to run really complex models, really complex risk models, really heavy compute, applications. And I want to be able to do this in a way that you can't be rugged. And so this then, if you join those two things together, safe compute and protocol managed wallets, then you can build a totally decentralized prime broker. And that's kind of really interesting to me. So hopefully that answers, your question of where we want to go in the future. It's basically, we've got the data now, we're getting more data, we're building the bridges, now we want to do the compute.
Fantastic. And for this conversation, it was, it went by so quick, and it was so good to talk all together with it about this very topic. Plus, the XRP ledger specifically is expanding so much in its ecosystem, cross-chain, interoperability, and it's like a huge ecosystem and multi-chain ecosystem now. And it's very, very good to see that so many people are working together to make it seamless. People can utilize multiple products, platforms, services, and not limited to maybe only what is available maybe on their own chain, or even less within, let's say, their platform that they are typically using. One thing I want to say as well is, Hugo, I saw that you're also going to be at XRPL Apex in Singapore, which is fantastic.
I am indeed. I'm looking forward to it.
Absolutely, that's really cool. I saw you as a speaker, and I pinned up also at the top the XRP Ledger Apex for those who want to register and get a ticket and chime in. Definitely do so. I will be there as well. A lot of people from the community will be there. So if you can make it there, would be fantastic to meet you and have good discussions over there with the audience. Of course, Hugo will be there too. And I also want to say, if you cannot make it, that's also important to say. If you cannot make it, don't worry. There will be live sessions and live streams. So even people who may not be able to participate physically, virtually, I'm sure there will be done a lot that people can also participate in that. Well, with that being said, first, Hugo and Thanos, thank you very much for having that discussion. It was very, very insightful, also educational. I love that, so that people have a good idea of what goes into it, like all the work to make it decentralized, to know where the yield is coming from, all of these things, custodial solutions, product managed wallets, all of these things, work together. And it's very, very important for people to have this on their radar. So whenever you go around and see for opportunities, yield, whatever, that you put these questions high on your list and check whatever that fits for you. But that is very, very important. Specifically, I want to reiterate, for us on the XRP Ledger, because we are kind of more new to the DeFi ecosystem, having AMMs, yield, and all of these things, projects being built on top, and specifically the community to go through these learnings a little bit more smoother, and not with, hopefully not that many mistakes and issues. So yeah, with that being said, again, thanks Hugo, Thanos for coming, and everybody else for listening. I'm definitely going to do it next time again as well. And wish everyone a nice afternoon.
Thank you so
Well, guys, there we have it. I thought it was quite insightful. It's always good to get a bit of an explanation or maybe an expansion of ideas from Hugo, and Thanos also chipped in there pretty well. Yeah, it's probably one that I'm probably going to have to watch again, pay a little bit more attention. I was in the chat quite a bit, but yeah, I really enjoyed that. I really hope that you did too. If you are a holder of a Lucky Claw or a Patreon member, the giveaway is tonight. It's happening in 4 hours from now. So if you are a holder of a Lucky Claw or a Patreon member, come tune in live. Of course, the Lucky Claw holders have got a jackpot prize of 50,000 FLR NFTs. We've got a Decent wallet to give away, and of course the Flare Community Pokédex. The Patreon members have a host of different NFTs as well. So if you can join that live, then please do so. And if not, I will see you all on Thursday night, where we will be doing the weekly news update. So guys, thank you all so much for watching. If you want, feel free to like and subscribe if you haven't already, and share the video if you did find it valuable. And with that said, if I don't catch you, have a great week, and until next time, I'm out.
We have liftoff.